Good morning, and welcome to the Holland House Mexico Breakout Room at the Mexico Oil and Gas Summit. Today's session is organized by Holland House Mexico in partnership with Mexico Business. My name is Thomas Barbet. I'm responsible for the energy and maritime sector within Holland House Mexico, and I will be the host of today's session. Holland House Mexico is the Dutch Mexican Chamber of Commerce based in Mexico City. Our goal is to facilitate the success of Dutch companies in the Mexican market and to promote international trade, investment, and sustainable business development between the Netherlands and Mexico. Before we start, I would like to go through some house rules. We would like to remind you that Chatham House rules apply to this session. And during the entire event, we invite you to place your questions in the chat box. After each presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. Also, we would like to remind you to please keep your microphone on mute during the presentations and panels. In today's breakout room program, we will focus on Dutch success stories and Dutch technology in the Mexican oil and gas industry. And we're very glad to be accompanied by leading players from the sector. Throughout the day, we will also have a number of networking opportunities and moments to connect with Holland House Mexico. Without further ado, let's move forward to the first part of today's agenda. We are very glad to be accompanied by Deputy Ambassador Judith Maas. Judith will be doing today's opening remarks. Judith Maas has been a Deputy Ambassador since 2017. And prior to this position, Judith was active in different roles in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 2003 and 2016. Deputy Ambassador, I would like to pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Thomas. Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. One person is not here today, and I would like to start a meeting by commemorating Octavio Navarro, who passed away a few weeks ago. I think most of us have known him for many, many years. He never missed an event of the Holland House Mexico. He never missed an event of the embassy. And I just wanted to wish his family members and all of his close friends a lot of strength in coping with his loss. It has been an exciting and challenging journey, and we have been seeing many changes in the energy sector over the last years. After the 2014 energy reform, Mexico was by far the most surface explored location on Earth. All main IOCs, the international oil companies and tier 1 operators came to Mexico to start exploration and production. So today, this has led to 21 exploratory offshore wells in Mexico, 9 of them from the private industry. And that makes Mexico the leader in the Americas in this market, with more wells even than the USA. And it's always nice if you can beat your big brother. Crude oil production in Mexico is forecasted to grow by 10% in the next 3 years. This is the first time in the last decade when production reverted its negative trend, in spite of lower energy demand in the last year, which was caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Natural gas production output in Mexico is estimated to increase as well from 2.6 billion cubic feet per day in 2022 to 3.9 in 2020 and 3.9 in 2022. Yet there are significant challenges for entrepreneurs in the sector, as we all know. So the current administration has a different approach to the energy sector. I think we have all noticed that in the past 2 years. Recent changes in the hydrocarbon and electricity laws, and also the recent negotiations and the sale of the Zama fields are examples of that, and they create uncertainty. Still, we see areas of opportunity throughout the value chain of the oil and gas industry, deep water and offshore technologies from the private sector. We have seen an increase in demand in offshore vessels, floating production, storage and offloading vessels, and also mobile offshore drilling units, just to name a few examples. I think the other challenge in the sector that I wanted to briefly notice is the transition towards more sustainability. International oil companies are shifting towards an energy transition, adapting and changing their strategic plans and projects, including the Dutch ones. In the Netherlands, we are investing in developing hydrogen as a green energy source, besides wind and solar energy. And we have seen an interest from some Dutch companies in Mexico too, which is really good news. As demands for the energy sector remain high, Mexico will continue to depend on fossil energy for at least the coming years. And I believe that the challenge is to work in the most sustainable way possible. Best practices that we have seen by Dutch companies include the use of e-vessels or biofuel instead of diesel to reduce the carbon footprint. And I'd be really eager to hear more best practices during discussions today. So let me just conclude by telling you that I'm really looking forward to the discussions, and I hope that today will trigger further innovative ideas. I think Dutch companies are known for their innovation and dedication to sustainability, and I'm very proud of that. And I hope we can collaborate and work together in this changing industry. So thank you very much, and enjoy the event.
Thank you very much, Judith, for your opening remarks. Thank you very much for being with us here today. We will now move on to the next element of today's program. And in this panel, we will focus on the Ixalquil Pucoch project of Fieldwood, as well as on its stakeholders involved in the project. The panel will center around the key factors for collaboration, for successful collaboration between service providers and operators. Here to introduce and moderate the panel is Benjamin Torres Barón, partner of Baker McKenzie Mexico. Benjamin joined Baker McKenzie in 1998 and currently leads the Energy, Mining and Infrastructure Practice Group in Mexico. As a member of the EMI Global Steering Committee at the firm, Benjamin handles all legal matters related to development and construction of real estate, energy, mining, infrastructure, and major projects. Benjamin, over to you.
Thomas, good morning. And once again, thank you for considering me and inviting me, giving me the privilege to share the panel this morning at the first session of our week event. It's certainly a pleasure. As you mentioned, we will be chatting and having a conversation with a few friends and speakers from the company Subsea 7 and also from Fieldwood Energy, and I will be able to introduce them just in a minute. I think working with IOC, working with the operators, it creates a big symbiosis into the operators and the service providers. The success of one is the success of the other. They mutually depend on specific success and performance in order to achieve the targets and objectives that they commonly have achieved and have determined into this. For this morning, I have a privilege to introduce Andres Brugman. He is the Mexico country manager of Fieldwood Energy. I'm just going to share very quickly part of his background, professional background on the sector. Before being the country manager of Fieldwood Energy, he also was the country manager of QRI. Also, he was involved with Pemex. He was responsible for financial, administrative, and procurement operations for Pemex Healthcare Division. He occupied another positions in Pemex from 2010 through 2012. He also worked as an associate for Citigroup and a project manager for Procter & Gamble.
Claro, que si no nos dicen esa es la liga, pues
On the other hand, I also,
pero necesitas desconectarte del otro.
yeah, if you can please mute yourselves in there, because,
Entonces, la otra es para la de la...
thank you. Yeah, I also wanted to introduce Mr. Bruce Joder. He is a senior project manager for the company Subsea 7. And, in his education, he has a bachelor in science and mining engineering. He has over 35 years of experience in the mining industry, civil construction, and maritime construction. He has more than 20 years in the oil and gas industry in many projects in the oil and gas. He has worked in the US, Brazil, West Africa, and now in Mexico. And also from Subsea 7, it is my pleasure to introduce to Marco Gutierrez. He is the business development manager for, again, Subsea 7. Marco joined Subsea 7 back in 2017 in the heavy lifting and renewable business unit as a business development manager for Mexico. He is currently the regional Subsea 7 BD manager for Latin America, SURF, and conventional business unit. As a regional business manager, he holds the responsibility to promote Subsea 7 brand, country strategy, and develop new market opportunities. Marco holds a bachelor in science in industrial engineer and a project management training certificate. It is my pleasure to introduce to all of them. Not sure, I wanted to confirm Ms. Andres is already with us, Thomas, so we can just begin the conversation.
Yes, Andres is with us.
Hello, good morning. Nice seeing you, Andres. I hope you can hear me okay.
Good morning, everyone. Was solving just IT issues, but happy to be here with you guys.
I'm glad that we have you with us, Andres. So why don't we start the program? We're going to have maybe about 30, probably 35 minutes of a conversation between Andres, Marco, and Bruce and I. We will have some room for Q&A. As Thomas mentioned, and I'll emphasize that, please make sure you include them in the chat. I will tackle on those questions. If you prefer to direct any specific question to one of our speakers, I will make sure I direct those questions to him as appropriate. So Andres, obviously, I mean, I wanted to begin the conversation on the successful collaboration that is between operators and service providers. But before that, before getting into the conversation, I wanted to ask the three of you, Andres, Bruce, and Marco. Let's begin with Andres. If you can give us a quick context of your company and the current situation your company is in Mexico in terms of investment, so the audience could be more familiar. What is about Subsea 7, what is about Fieldwood, and what are the current measures and specifics of your company and yourself. Maybe if we can give it maybe about a minute or two for each one of you to introduce your company and your business, if you may.
Sure, happy to do so. So Fieldwood Energy, as some of you might know, is a large company that specializes in shallow waters. It used to be basically only shallow water properties for very mature assets in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico. In 2015, we decided to enter Mexico with the opportunity that the bid rounds were offering, and due to the exciting and the resources that are in Mexico that are very rich, and we thought that it was a great advantage to bring best practices in drilling and reservoir management in order to develop some of these fields in Mexico. So that's basically why Fieldwood in 2015 decided to enter into Mexico. This is the first international venture of Fieldwood Energy ever. And ever since then, the Mexico project, due to its size and due to the nature of the fields, which were relatively new, they were explored, but we had to appraise and develop this field, what we call greenfield development. This was very different to the traditional business model of Fieldwood, which was acquiring very mature assets and extending the life of the assets and trying to extract the last drop of oil that was available. So it was separated in nature, and therefore all the team that has been allocated into the Mexico project is an independent team, and we operate basically autonomous from the US. Nonetheless, we take the opportunity and the advantage to leverage all our capabilities, logistics, procurement, etc., all the processes that we have, and we operate in the exact same fashion or very similar on how we operate in the US. That's in a nutshell our business and how we structure it in Mexico.
Thank you, Andres. And I will get back to you in a minute. I will first would like Bruce and or Marco to introduce your company, your business operations that you have in Mexico. If you like, perhaps maybe Bruce can introduce Subsea 7 globally speaking, the company as a global company, and maybe Marco will just enhance and elaborate on the activities in Mexico, or Marco or any of you, Bruce, can just introduce the company generally, as you may wish.
Okay, I think I'll start off if you don't mind. Thank you for that introduction, Benjamin, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this discussion. So for Subsea 7, we're a global organization that provides project management, engineering, procurement, installation, and construction expertise. We deliver a full life cycle services across currently 2 business units. One is Subsea and conventional, and the other one is renewable. The Subsea and conventional is your typical subsea construction, pipelines, umbilicals, but it's a full service, meaning we start with the early engagement with clients. We go through concept, design, the engineering, then of course procurement, fabrication, installation, and commissioning. Then we also have capabilities for maintenance. The extended outlook on how to maximize recoveries on existing developments, as well as decommissioning. So we do work globally. We have worked in Mexico in the past. This particular project is our second project in Mexico. We currently have an office in Mexico as well, and I'll let Marco kind of talk about that a little bit more. Just to touch on our responsibility in this development, we had the EPCI responsibility for the pipeline system. We also had the responsibility for the T&I of the 2 top sites, which is the transport and installation of the Pococh and the Chiquil pipeline. So the EPCI portion was the design of the pipeline, which included risers, tie-in spools, and then of course the actual installation, trenching, backfill, and then the flood clean gauge hydro test. So with that, I'll hand it over to Marco.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Benjamin, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for the invitation, actually. Well, Subsea 7 has been present in Mexico. Actually, we are turning 10 years at the end of 2011. The first project we had here was basically the EPCI for 2 pipelines between the 2 Pemex infrastructures in the Gulf of Mexico. Then, after that, we won maintenance project, for Pemex, which actually lasted 5 years. We finished the project last year, in which we used to have, I think our peak was around 600 employees in Mexico, which was 120 people onshore, and the rest was actually offshore. So now, after this stage, I would call it that way, we won this Chiquil and Pococh project, and of course we are aiming and looking for more, and we of course, to have a permanent presence in Mexico for the years to come. So, well, basically, that's what can I say of our operations activities in the country for the last 10 years, basically. Long story short, basically.
Thank you, Marco, and I appreciate that. I'm sure you have a lot more to share, but unfortunately, we have a very short time. Let me begin with the conversation. I mean, this is going to be a very casual conversation among us. I want you to be free, for any of the panelists to interact if you like, or if you want to chime into the conversation. I would like to begin with Andres. And Andres, obviously, I mean, we have mentioned how important is this symbiosis, this connection between the service company, the service provider, and the operator. We have already given a context of the Chaquil and Pococha project that Fieldwood is leading. But I have two questions for you. Probably you can take between 4 to 5 minutes if you like, and maybe less if you prefer. The first question, and then I'll go into the next one. I would like you just to walk us through, to give us a summary of the different achievements, the milestones, all the lessons that you being in charge and leading Fieldwood, you have learned. What the lessons have you learned over the past 3 years in the operation of the company, in the management of the company, in the operation of the field, and what also the challenges that you have faced to overcome and to bring the field into the production. So in other words, what the different challenges and opportunities that you have faced throughout your career by leading Fieldwood?
No, thanks, Mike. I mean, that's a great question. So it's a lot to unpack, but let me try to be brief. Well, first of all, we started our development phase actually in 2018, in January of 2018. But as you know, these are the first projects to be developed in Mexico under the new regulation, right? So it's always a challenge when you are doing things for the first time, and you have to learn very fast, and you have to adapt. That's one of the key, I would say, achievements that the Fieldwood Mexico organization has been able to push through in the past 3 years. And why do I say this? So as you probably know, all the industry, the regulation was aimed to having just a single operator. So now with multiple operators and the requirements that particularly the CNH made during the production sharing contracts to operators are very strict. And they are very, very strict. They are aligned with the toughest international standards, not only in terms of transparency, of accountability, of environmental protection, of security, safety. So that's always a challenge to start something new. And the regulatory landscape has been very, very challenging because, as you know, there's nothing as pure black and white. So whenever you are doing a project, you always find a gray area that you need to go with the authority and request, okay, what do we do in this case? For example, in the case of the Chaquil and Pococha project, it is the first time Pemex works with another operator, and we connect offshore, and we are basically leasing a platform from Pemex that was abandoned, the Tumut platform. But it's the first time ever that Pemex leases a platform to a third party. So just going through that process, because it is a federal asset, it is not that Pemex can just go and sign a simple contract like another private company could do, just getting the approval of their legal departments and just sign it and do it. It takes a lot of internal processes that go outside Pemex. You need an outside appraisal special entity called Indavin. You need significant approvals within different areas of Pemex, etc. So just doing a simple lease takes, of course, much longer than you would anticipate because you are doing this for the first time. The second is, for example, new standards. As another operator, we bring a new philosophy. For example, our platforms are designed to be unmanned. So our whole operation should be unmanned once we reach commercial production. So this is also a change in the game. Never before these type of production platforms have been unmanned in the Mexico side of the Gulf. So just going through all the authorizations and approvals and reviews to achieve that has been very, very challenging because you are doing something that it's completely different and people are not used to seeing that, and they are, I would say, a little bit afraid to sign on something new that they've never seen before, and they don't know if it works or it will not work, right? So we have had tremendous support from the authorities, but it's just a natural process when you are doing something for the first time ever for Mexico. So that has been one of another critical challenges into building this project. And last but not least, we have been successful in doing great alliances with our suppliers. So in case of Bruce and Marco, we have been working together way back, and we have been very successful. But just building and getting into that, and they also have issues with the regulation because they are doing this again for a different company that it's not Pemex, so it's relatively different, and they have to comply with some additional requirements. It has been challenging. We have been working as a team and making again these successful teams with our vendors, but it is a challenge. You have to create it and you have to dedicate time in order to solve it. And that's basically one of the critical aspects we think when we do these tenders is how are we going to structure the work to be done so that the companies can have as much flexibility to execute and responsibility in a single side. We don't want to subcontract every single item and go to the nuts and bolts of the project to try to integrate everything. That's not our business. We're in the business of just producing oil, and there are better companies that are experts in just delivering the infrastructure that is required. However, you can also not give everything to a single company in our mind, no, because you need to play with the risks and the challenges they are going to be facing also on the regulatory side. And sometimes you don't want to delay the entire project just because you are missing one authorization. And that's where the strategy kicks in, and that's where we decide on how to split the packages and how to build, for example, building the platforms, drilling the wells. How do we structure all the contracts associated with that offshore activity in order to try to minimize the risks during the execution? So that has been a critical challenge. And for example, I can tell you one of the critical things we valued, it was the speed to implement once the equipment was offshore. So that was one of the critical things we valued. For example, in the pipeline or the subsea pipelines that we are implementing for the project, laying that pipe offshore has a lot of risks and sometimes very hard to control, even though you prepare, because as you probably know, there's the risk of pirate attacks. It's all over. The past 2 years has been very frequent. So for us, where we have the mindset of first to protect all the employees, the safety of the employees and the employees of our contractors, it's paramount to us. It's the first thing we care, and we try to minimize the risk during execution. So those are the factors, at least an operator like Fieldwood values before starting offshore activity.
Thank you, Andres. And I think your last couple of comments and statements are the perfect transition into my next question. In fact, you already covered some of them, so don't want to be redundant, but maybe you can elaborate on that, because the audience is very interested in understanding your approach for contracting. You already spoke about that broadly. We want to know, how do you decide what is contracted directly, what is subcontracted, what do you carry out on your own? Obviously, there are certain rules and specific obligations under the production sharing contract, right? Of what you can contract and how do you contract that. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about that. And especially with the relationship with Subsea 7, how do you manage those relationships, and what is the main driver to deciding who to use and up to what point? I mean, you already discussed part of that, but maybe you want to elaborate briefly on this.
Oh, sure. So in the case, just to go through the whole spectrum of activities, in the case of drilling, the way that Fieldwood contracts to date is that we contract the rig, the rig on a daily rate, so that we tender for rigs, and then we purchase all the tangibles, all the pipes, the tubulars, all the drilling services separate, and we do packages for drilling and also for completions. So that's we tender the different business lines and services. We do, however, try to group those service lines, particularly service lines that they have to work together. So whenever there's a service line that needs to work very close, and the delivery and the quality of service is impacted by adjacent services that are run together or simultaneously, we typically try to bundle those together, provided that the market is giving those services. So for example, the big companies like Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker, etc., Weatherford, they typically have several business lines. So whenever they offer those services together, we tend to group those and we tender for those separately. With regards to construction activities and infrastructure or facilities, due to the nature of the project, we decided to tender a single EPCI contract. This single EPCI contract was for the fabrication, engineering, construction, installation, and of the 2 topsides, one for each field, and also the subsea pipelines that tie those production platforms together. Plus, there was a reconditioning of the Tumut platform that I was talking about, where we have to basically convert a platform that just served as a platform for steel, that had no equipment that we could use. So we had to remove everything, just use the steel carcass, and then we had to put all the equipment that we're going to be using, since we're going to be metering and conditioning the production there for selling to Pemex. So we decided to do a single EPCI contract, basically because we needed the synchrony between activities, right? So any delay in the fabrication of the topsides would impact when we could install and connect the pipelines. So we didn't want to have 2 completely isolated contracts. Let's say that we have the pipelines ready 1 month, and then waiting 4 months just to complete the tie-ins to the platform. So those sort of things, that's led us to the decision to bid a single EPCI contract for that. However, before that, we tender a separate package for just the jackets. So the jackets, we were in a rush to install the jackets so the rigs could start drilling with the jackets already installed, because that would simplify the installation of the topsides later on. So that, for example, was a separate contract that we could execute much faster, and the delivery time was much faster. So therefore, we separated the jackets from the topsides. This is not really common. There are a lot of operators build those together. But because of the nature of our project, where the drilling takes a long time, these wells take on average 6 months to drill because they are very deep. For us, having the rigs drilling as soon as possible would give us time to produce earlier, right? Because if we waited to have all the topsides, all the subsea pipelines installed, and then drill, it would have been taking another 2 years to start production. On the other hand, if we did the opposite, let's say just drill without anything, then trying to connect the platforms and the jackets would have been much more complicated. So we tried to find that sweet spot, and that's the reason why we tender just a single contract. However, on the day-to-day management, we acknowledge that building topsides and laying pipelines is a completely two different business lines. And Bruce will not let me lie. We work with Bruce together on a daily basis, working hand on hand, because we understand and manage those risks completely different from the risks of the fabrication of the topside. So those again are completely and separate business. And even the installation of the topsides, which in our case was done by Herema, that was another, let's say, subcontract. It was not contracted directly by Fieldwood, but we managed the execution also together with Bruce and the Herema folks, just to try to minimize the execution risks and mitigate any problems that could arise.
Thank you, Andres. Well, I think that also will be the perfect transition to introduce and bring in Marco and Bruce on this. We have about maybe 10 to 12 minutes for, going on through the discussion on the Subsea side on it. Bruce, I would like to ask you first, how has Subsea 7 contributed to the success of the Fieldwood project?
So I believe, and it really does, I really do agree with what Andres has said, that the success of this project is really through the collaboration of all of the parties that are involved. For us, our ways of working, we truly believe in collaborating with the stakeholders that we have throughout all phases of the project, and really to provide the solution that Fieldwood is looking for. We were able to establish a really good working relationship really throughout the entire project, with not only our subcontractors, but also with Fieldwood subcontractors as well, that were needed at different times. So I believe that not only with our experience with EPCI contracting, but our willingness and our drive to really stay engaged with our client and work collaboratively to come up with the proper solution and work through all of the issues that we have. There are challenges on the projects, and if you don't have that relationship, when you get to those problems and you get to those struggles, it can really be detrimental to the project itself. So the collaborative nature of both Fieldwood and Subsea 7, I believe, were really the contributing factors to the project.
Thank you, Bruce. Also, wanted to ask you, what makes the installation challenging, and what makes Subsea 7 the right company for the job?
So with every project, you have your challenges. In this particular project, you had as Andrea said, you had new regulations. You had an IOC that was working for the first time in Mexico. You had just a lot of different activities going on. There was a lot of coordination that was required on all parties with all of the different assets that were in the field. The working environment, the particular conditions of the field itself, presented quite a few technical challenges. And the Subsea 7 has not only do they have the presence in Mexico to assist in understanding, what it takes to bring in foreign assets, to work in the region, which was where Subsea 7 had the strength, and why we felt that we were the right company for the job, because we did have presence in there. We had a working relationship with Fieldwood in the Gulf of Mexico. So the different challenges, the relationship, the depth of experience that Subsea has with all of the different regions, with regards to having expertise in welding, having expertise in heavy lift, to support the T&I subcontract that we had put in place. So I believe that Subsea 7 was right for this job because of all of the factors that Subsea 7 believes in, the expertise, the technologies. We did bring a new technology to the region, relay. I believe we had the first reeled pipeline that was installed in Mexico at this time, which was a solution that we brought to the region, which helped to minimize at least one asset's duration in the field. As Andreas talked about, there was some security concerns in the field. So, we were able to bring some new ways of working, some new technologies into the region. So that's what I believe why Subsea 7 was the right choice for the work.
Thank you, Bruce. Now allow me to turn it over to Marco. And Marco, you have significant experience working in Mexico. Subsea 7 also has, deep experience working with NOCs, such as Pemex. And then I really would like to know, and for you to explain to the audience, what are the different lessons learned? What are the differences in dealing and having in managing contracts with IOCs on one hand, or maybe others, NOCs such as Pemex? What would be the main difference that you can share to us?
Well, main difference, basically, we're talking about Pemex, which is the biggest and will continue to be the biggest operator in Mexico. Is basically size. While Fieldwood, because the very recent experience in Mexico, of course, you don't have to deal with big organizations. Talking about Fieldwood, while in the other hand, Pemex is a huge organization. So basically having a linear organization between the two of us, Fieldwood and Subsea 7, makes things to the decision-making process to be faster, more agile. While Pemex, even though you are dealing with just one company, they have different areas, and those areas work at sometimes very different between each other. So sometimes it's not impossible, but complicated, to get to make things run smoothly. Basically, like I can talk about working permits. To get access to offshore facilities. HAC, well, we just have one person for all three things. Sometimes Pemex, because of the nature of their projects and the size of their operations, they have to have three different persons, or one person specialized for each of those topics. So that's basically, the differences between, the two of us. And for us, of course, one of the things that I don't think we have, of course, there's always lessons to learn in each project, but what helped us very much is that all of personnel, at least the 30-something people 35, I believe, people that work in the field project, all of them had experience working with Pemex. So, and of course with Mexican authorities. So that helped, to run the project smoothly. I mean, as Bruce mentioned, there's always challenges, but thanks to that experience is how we managed to overcome those challenges without problem.
Thank you, Marco, for your comments. I think we have a little bit of room to ask the two final questions, if I may. I also want to encourage the audience to send us your questions over the chat. Again, please make sure you identify who you want the question to be directed to. But in between, in the meantime, I will have these questions for the three of you gentlemen. Feel free to respond it or just to defer it to your other colleague. And the question is the following: what are the main changes in Mexico operating environment in terms of permitting, local content requirements, and contracts, financing, and any other risks that you identify specifically nowadays? What would you like to say? Any one of you can answer that one if you like.
I can start to try to address your question. It's a great question. So for local content requirements, the production sharing contracts are very, very strict, and they have very clear guidelines and mandates. Operators required to get to 35% of national content, which sounds relatively easy and simple, but in reality, it's a lot of effort to reach to that 35% milestone, and let me try to explain really why. In order to the national content formula, the way it works is that just the goods that were manufactured in Mexico allow you and give you this national content. So for example, a rig, if you are hiring or contracting a rig or a specialized vessel like the one of Subsea 7, that gives you zero national content. It doesn't matter that the companies are registered in Mexico and they have Mexican subsidiaries and Mexico employees. That basically just counts as to the employees, the salaries of the employees that are working actually on the rig or on the vessel. But that's the only content you get, which is minimal compared to the cost and the investments are required on those assets in order to perform the job. So again, getting there, it's very, very challenging, and you need to think your sourcing strategy from day one. The other topic is financing. Financing has been, I would say in general, has been reduced towards oil and gas. So we have seen, particularly a year and a half ago, we have seen this trend to go to the ESG and to clean energies. Notwithstanding, we are firmly and believe that you can execute sustainable oil and gas projects. So you can have a poor operator having lots of environmental damage and issues while doing or developing a field, or you can have a very responsible operator that takes the environment and security and the communities very seriously, as we do, and we minimize any impact from day one. So for example, just in the offshore activities, we hire marine biologists just to search and spot for mammals. And if there's an endangered mammal in the area, we need to halt the activities. So that is the level of how strict we are. And financing is going in that direction. So in order to get oil and gas financing, you need to go to the toughest and strictest ESG standards. So at least abide by the IFC, the International Finance Corporation standards, the Equator principles, and your organization needs to execute and abide by these requirements, which again are top of the line in terms of developments of any nature. These go just beyond the oil and gas. But again, these are some of the changes in the landscape and in the industry globally, and operators need to move on and be more strict every time. take more consideration of local communities in the case of Mexico, and just talking and talking about the previous comment, just be very mindful that it's not only that Fieldwood as an operator has, of course, different procedures and rules and standards than Pemex. It is that legally, all the legal framework for the Pemex assignments, it's completely different from the legal framework for the production sharing contracts and the license contracts, for example, for deep water or for onshore fields. So legally from the start, we have different requirements that we need to comply. And that's why, as Marco was mentioning, one thing is internal organizational processes, but the other is the actual regulation, which differs a small bit, but a very important bit in the execution of contracts. And just for those who want to operate in Mexico or that are operating in Mexico, just keep in mind those. They are going to be very different requirements, and your clients and customers will be demanding very different things, even though the actual work is the same, right? So laying a pipeline is the same, no matter who's your customer. But of course, as we have different requirements, they will be passed on to you because we need your help to satisfy those requirements for the regulation. So that's just very important for everybody to keep in mind.
Thank you, Andres. Marco, Bruce, would you like to chime in, elaborate on any of this?
Bruce, do you want to go or should I go first?
I'll let you go, Marco.
Okay, great. Well, what can I say about it's very interesting what happened to us during this project, especially and about the permitting, navigation permitting and logistics and such. We went through through the transition between the transport ministry and the Navy ministry. So before and in the past, those permitting was managed by the transport ministry, but now everything related to ports, navigation, port logistics, etc. Now everything is handled by the Navy, the Mexican Navy. So that you will say that, well, basically the changes, well, there were not changes in regulation, but there was changes more in the way of doing things. When you are dealing with a military organization, of course, you can expect, things go from A to Z without, skipping any step. And the change of commands can be very complicated and sometimes can delay things. But of course, we went through, the learning curve of that. But once that obstacle was managed, I think the things started running very smoothly, and even more less bureaucratic than we expected. So that's basically one of the main changes that we saw. And of course, talking about let's say the local content that Andres was mentioning is that we, Subsea 7, we always try to use at least as much as possible as to use local vendors, Mexican local vendors, or foreign companies with permanent establishment in Mexico to contribute with the local content. So that's basically what we're trying, to contribute with the projects and with the country, with providing or using as much local content as possible. So yeah, this is basically what can I say, the things I can say about this. And yeah, I don't think I have any additional comments on that.
Thank you, Bruce. Anything to add? Well, I think we have room for one last question, which is, I think, is a question that everybody wants to hear. As you know, most of the audience is integrated by many Dutch companies, many new companies that are interested to develop and expand their business in Mexico. They want to hear about the potential of our country and about the opportunities, right? What would be your advice from your end? I mean, if you can use a minute just to briefly give some recommendations and highlights, and what would be the best advice for enter into the Mexican oil and gas industry in Mexico? Maybe we'll begin with you, Andres, in 1 minute.
Thanks, Benjamin. Well, I would just say get very good local advice. No, particularly I would say legal advice. Insurance, it's critical because the requirements Mexico is posing are unique. And I don't mean to change your risk management strategies. It's just simply issuing a policy. It's very challenging because the ASEA regulation is unique. And again, it's different for Pemex, for the assignments than for production sharing contracts or licenses. So just bear that in mind. So getting key local advice, I would say, is critical. Mexico sometimes is challenging. Again, remember, this is the first time the industry is working as an industry instead of just one single operator. So when you have one operator, the regulators really don't act as regulators because they don't really regulate a lot of things because one company knows how to operate, they have the know-how, and they just operate. And the regulatory part is very minimal. When you have multiple operators operating with different strategies and ideas, the regulator has to become much more involved, which they are today. But again, it's a learning curve. There are some things that we're doing still for the first time, and there is still a lot of way to go. I mean, the deep water projects are just starting, intermediate waters as well. So there is still a lot of operators that are coming behind Fieldwood, and they will be developing new fields, and they will be facing new requirements, new additional changes, and therefore key local advice would be critical to obtain.
Thank you, Andres. Maybe that would be to Marco as well. Marco, your input on the best advice for new companies entering into the Mexico oil and gas market?
Well, I think Andres pretty much covered it all. Of course, getting a good advice, local advice. And if you are planning to partner with someone, it's basically to be careful and trying to do your checks and balances on that to get the right partner if that's the idea you have.
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. One of the best advice is to get the right lawyer, right?
Exactly.
That would be me. No. We are running out of time. Maybe, I mean, if I can, Thomas, because we started a little bit late, I would like to ask 30 seconds to each of you to do the closing of the panel. If you have some closing remarks, something you would like to add that we didn't have the chance to highlight, or maybe I didn't ask the question that you wanted just to share with the audience. Let's start with you, Bruce, since you've been silent recently. Any 30 seconds last comments and remarks you would like just to share to close our panel?
So for me, working in Mexico was a really good experience. It allowed some opportunities, some experiences, some learnings in working in I don't want to say a different region, but it was a different region for me. But there's always things to consider when you're working in a different region, bringing in outside assets, bringing in outside people, the time factor, with the environment that's changing in Mexico, as Andres alluded to, there is a time factor. Don't assume that from a location where you've been working for many years, the same time frame can be used in that location. Navigation permits is an example. You've got a certain number of days that it takes to get an international asset into the company. So understanding what it takes, understanding the local conditions, understanding the local ways of working is really key. And to me, that would be, going back to your previous question about advice for anybody that's trying to work into the Mexico oil and gas industry, is just really understand what you're trying to do and the conditions with which you need to work under.
That's a very good point, Bruce. I've seen clients that said, well, I've done business in Latin America and been doing business in Argentina or Colombia, but this is a different market, and we have to understand the local market, especially. And there are differences, even though both are Latin American countries. Yes, that's, I think, a very wise advice you have given us. Marco, quickly, for over 30 seconds, what would you like to remark?
Well, something very important that I think it's to everyone, to the audience, need to understand is that you need boots on the ground. If you are planning, to manage things from outside Mexico, it's not going to work. You need someone who understands the market, understands the country, understands how things work. Because otherwise, you will be like a sailing without, the compass, basically. So that's basically what I can say about this.
Absolutely, Mark. I couldn't agree with you more. Andres, over to you. Any final remark?
Thanks. I would just reiterate Marco's comments. It's critical. Mexico execution is critical. We are a country where documentation and authorizations are very, let's say, thorough in terms of the paperwork that needs to be submitted. It's extremely how thorough this documentation is in sometimes compared to other countries. So that is very, very, very important. Local knowledge on how to deliver these things is critical. And I would just add, for us, we're very excited. Finally, after 5 years, next month we hope to start production in the two fields, the Ichakil and the Pococh fields. So we're very, very excited to finally see the crystallizing this investment and the development of these fields into the early production phase of the project. So we are very, very excited, having lots of challenges, as you know, with dealing with COVID, dealing with many, many things simultaneously. But we're very excited about that. And hopefully you will be hearing good news from us shortly. And just last, thank a lot the Holland House for the invitation once again. And thank Bruce, Marco, and Benjamin for a very interesting discussion.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, gentlemen. I really have enjoyed this conversation. I thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience in the Mexican market. I think that was very valuable to us. And again, thank you to Holland House. Over to you, Thomas. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, Benjamin. And thank you to all for this excellent panel discussion. Andres, Bruce, Marco, Benjamin, thank you for your time and for being here with us today. We will now interrupt the Holland House Mexico breakout room to allow you to participate in the central program of the Mexico Oil and Gas Summit, which has just started a few minutes ago. We will return to this breakout room for the virtual coffee break at 12. And this is followed by a presentation about human resources in oil and gas. And later on in the afternoon, we'll have, there will be opportunities to connect with the Holland House Mexico team. For now, enjoy the first day of the Mexico Oil and Gas Summit. And I look forward to seeing you later on in the afternoon.